Today's episode of Roadie Free Radio is brought to you by Boulevard Carroll Entertainment Group. Productions, rehearsals, installations with an expert staff and state-of-the-art equipment, no matter the size of your production. From rehearsal to curtain, they've got you covered.
What's happening, Roadies? This is Dancer McCullough.
This is Catherine Turman.
What's happening, Roadies? This is Michael Alago, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, Roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right. What is happening? And welcome to Roadie Free Radio. This is episode 163. This is your host, Larry Milburn, and I am coming at you from Northwest Connecticut, from a barn in Northwest Connecticut. Hello out there. How are you? Is everyone okay? Holy guacamole, people. We are in some frightening times. Listen, I am recording this currently at 1:15 p.m. on Monday, March 16th, moments before I'm going to hit publish on this episode. I'm sorry it did not come out at its scheduled time, and I'd also like to apologize up front for the Claire Murphy episode coming out a couple of days late as well. As we all know, we are in the midst of a new crisis in this world, this universe of ours. This planet Earth is under attack by COVID-19, the coronavirus. Oh my God, you can't escape it, man. It's crazy. I was in Philadelphia last week for about 3.5 days on a shoot for a client of mine. And I was fortunate enough to stay with Mr. Ryan Phillip George, who you all know if you've been listening to the show for a while. Ryan is the man behind thistourlife.com as well as the Tour Health Research Initiative. And his family put me up. Thank you, Ryan and family. I also got to have dinner with Miss Lisa Boland, who's been on the show doing VIP ticketing for the Dave Matthews Band. It was nice to see them. However, it was all a freaky time, as it was for all of you. Throughout the day, you would see airport closures and countries shutting down and tours canceling. And my heart went out to all of you roadies and all of you tour personnel out there, artists and crew members alike. It was just it's a crazy time, and I know everybody's freaking out. So do what you can, and we will get to that in a moment. But first, our guest today is Mr. Michael Anthony Alago, former famed A&R rep from Elektra Records, Geffen Records, and many more. We will get to him, and I am joined in this interview by co-host Laura Davis Channon, who was on the show way back, episode 129. You can find her interview there. She co-authored the book with Michael that is out now called I Am Michael Alago. We're going to get into all that good stuff, but first, happy birthdays to Chip Auchincloss, Mike Erickson, Andrew Radcliffe, and Hank Fury. Oh, man. All right. I don't know. Listen, here's I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about what to say, what I'm going to say about this coronavirus thing, if you even care to know. And that is this. Like the rest of us, like all of us, we're trying to figure out what to do, how life is going to change over the next few weeks. And I know that if you're in my industry, if you're an independent contractor, which most of you listening are, I believe, you are, tour personnel, you're artists, musicians, maybe you're a photographer, a filmmaker and whatnot. We're all freaking out about money. I certainly am. I've had some clients push several projects back into the fall, which means that, the balance of what I'm owed on certain things is not going to come for several months. And that's a little bit scary. Well, should we sit around and panic? Should we freak out? I don't think so. I'm making a list of all the things that I've been wanting to get done that I'm going to try to get done over the next few weeks, and we'll see how far I get. Cleaning out the studio, going through, old books and things like that, just filtering some things out, getting some man chores done around the property that I've been putting off. And, hopefully getting some YouTube videos done. I've got a bunch of content from the NAMM show I would like to finally get cut and get put out. And then a bunch of videos as well that I've been wanting to do about different pieces of gear that I've acquired over the last couple of months that I've wanted to put out for you guys. Also want to get in shape, do some of that stuff, get the yoga going, get my ankle healed from ankle surgery. So I guess my thoughts, my advice for the rest of you are, and it ain't anything, it's not earth shattering here, but just try to distract yourself, right? That's my solution anyways. Just try to distract myself with things to do. Go out, take a walk, ride a bike, be with your family. If you're not feeling well, go get some help right away. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling bummed, if you're feeling any of those things, please, 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 please reach out to a friend, make a phone call, set up a FaceTime, a Skype call, a Zoom call, whatever it is, and just talk it out, man. That's the best thing we can do. Distract yourselves. This is a great time to start that at-home yoga practice, to start your meditation practice, to repaint the living room. Whatever it is you've been putting off, now's the time to get on it so that when this thing passes, and it will pass, life will be different. You can at least look back and say, hey, you know what? I didn't sit around, with my head in my hands the whole time, but I got a bunch of things done. And the great part about it, as far as I can tell, in terms of the financial, is that we are all in this together. This is not just affecting a certain subsect of the population. Everybody's getting hit. That means that people at the IRS are getting hit. That means that people at the credit card companies are getting hit. And we've all got an amazing excuse to try to work things out together. So I don't know, man. That's my little bit. That's my tidbit. You know what I did last night? I'll tell you. We watched a Netflix movie. We watched the new Mark Wahlberg, Spencer Confidential. Just people beating each other up. A lot of crashing and shooting and guns and all kinds of stuff. It was perfectly mindless and fantastic. Do that. Watch a stupid, mindless show. Take your mind off all the stuff. And whatever you do, do not sit in front of the television all day watching the doomsday naysayers, because you will go out of your mind. If you are looking for something else to watch, why don't you check out TJ Hoffman's film about being a roadie called Roadie, My Documentary. It's over at roadiemydocumentary.com. He spent several years working on this film, and boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, it's a great one. It's a great look into the life of a touring professional. If you don't know what that already looks like, check it out, roadiemydocumentary.com. Also, you could go to Amazon and check out a couple of books. Let's see. We've got The Last Seat in the House, The Story of Hanley Sound by John Kane. It is now available. There are links in the show notes for this episode for all this stuff that I'm talking about. You can also finally take the survey over at Tour Health Research Initiative. That is tourhealth.org. Take the survey now. Now is a perfect time. How do you feel being home with tours being canceled? Mark down your answer, and these guys will start getting you some help. You can also check out Girl on Tour. Claire Murphy, the guitar tech that I had on last week, her book is out. All of this stuff, again, is in the show notes. All right, let's just get to the episode, man. This is a good one, and I don't want you guys to miss it. I was first introduced to Michael Alago a couple years back because of the Drew Stone documentary on Netflix that is still available. If you head over, it's Who Is That Guy? The Fabulous Life and Times of Michael Alago, something to that effect. But if you look up Who Is That Guy or Michael Alago in Netflix, you will find this fantastic documentary. And I said the same thing. Who the hell is this guy? I got to have him on the show. It has taken about 2 years and many windy roads to get to him and have him on the show. I want to point out that Laura Davis Channon, as I mentioned up front, is my co-host. We had a fantastic opportunity to sit down at Boulevard Carroll Productions in a great Studio One there. I want to give a big shout out to Anthony and all of his staff over there for having us and giving us the room for the morning to do this interview. It was very, very kind of you. And so this episode is sponsored in full by Boulevard Carroll Entertainment Group. Michael Alago has had quite an incredible career, and we had a really, really cool chat. You know, a couple of highlights for him. He signed Metallica very early on when he was at Elektra Records. He signed White Zombie when he moved over to Geffen. He's produced albums by Cyndi Lauper, Public Image Ltd, and Nina Simone. He's a Brooklyn man, and he's an AIDS survivor. He's a survivor. He's a fighter. he's an interesting dude. He is an interesting dude, and I'm humbled that he offered to come on the show and speak with us. And so I just got to thank you again. And Laura, I want to give you another shout out for helping me co-host this episode. Laura, incidentally, is on the episode because she co-authored the book with Michael. And she's got some fantastic insight, not only to him and his life, but also to that time in music. And her book, The Girl in the Back, is also in the show notes. You should check that out. She's episode 129. As I mentioned at the beginning, you should go back and listen to her episode as well. Very, very cool stuff. So if the New York downtown scene, CBGBs, Max's Kansas City, art galleries of the city, and all that good stuff are something that interests you, I think you are going to get a lot out of today's episode. So I'm just going to get to it, guys. Again, I hope you are well. From all of us here at Roadie Free Radio, I wish you well. Please, please, please be safe and take care of yourselves. Wash your hands. Do what you got to do. Distract your minds. Pick up a hobby right now. Start something new. Repaint your house. I don't know. Go mow the lawn. Do something, man. Just don't think about the coronavirus. But in the meantime, you just go right ahead, fire up this episode, and listen with Mr. Michael Anthony Alago.
Hit it. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
I guess I'm the one welcoming myself to New York.
Correct.
Yeah. How are we doing?
I live downtown.
You live right
She
there.
lives further downtown.
Yeah.
We're all at the base of the island.
It's awesome to meet you in person.
Yes.
We've had a lot of, we did our Skype interview.
Connections.
You've already scolded me for not doing it in person with you.
Yeah.
And we were going to try to meet for lunch
Yes.
at Organic Grill, which we've talked about.
Yes.
But that didn't happen. But now we're here. We're here to celebrate the book. I am Michael Alago. How are you guys feeling now that it's done and almost out?
Oh, God.
Well, you know, nothing's
Laura's probably happier than you are.
What? Nothing is easy. You know, we just do the best that we can do.
Yes.
And when you have to deal with corporations and
You have
other
no
people,
idea.
Yeah.
then it can be a bit draining.
What was this experience like for you to go through this?
Torture. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I imagine it
gonna
probably was.
No,
Some
never
of it-
torture.
some of it was, no?
I would never use that word. No.
Okay.
What was it like? Let's see. Well, Laura and I both have the same agent, Lee Sobel.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, he said, I think you should write a book. Sure, I'll write a book. They wanted to know if I had more stories. I always have more stories. And then he said, you know what, you should meet up with Laura Davis. I said, I know Laura Davis from 30 years ago, but we haven't seen each other. Like her life went one way and my life went another way. So we wound up having lunch downtown once or twice and we reconnected on a lot of levels. So it just wound up working out. Nothing is ever easy, but torture, I would never use that word. No.
All right.
It's all good.
Yeah, it was all
Pardon?
good. But was it nice to, I guess the other question first though is the documentary came out, the Drew Stone doc came out a few years ago, 2012, somewhere around there, right?
Oh gosh, not that far away.
No?
The documentary
it was 12
came
was
out.
when you guys met.
Yes.
Okay.
Again,
Right.
we met in 97
Right.
when the Misfits and Sub-Zero went on tour.
Yeah.
And then we met again in the 2000s and he asked if he could make a documentary about me.
Yeah.
And I said yes. And that took about 4 years. So it actually was released in 2017.
Okay.
And it's been on Netflix ever since,
Right.
which is a blessing because they usually don't have documentaries on that long.
Right.
And they re-upped us there, whatever the word is, up until September 2020. And in addition to that, the documentary just got added to Amazon Prime Video as well. So it's really a blessing that
Great.
all of this is just still moving along beautifully.
Yeah.
And that helped get the book deal.
So why did you feel though after the documentary you still needed to get a book out there? Because it wasn't your story necessarily. It was Drew's lens,
it's Drew's
or was
story about me. Obviously, it's my story, but
Right,
there were
but-
more stories to tell, and why not? I love books. If
Yeah.
you came to my house, you would think I was a hoarder, but I'm not a hoarder. I'm a collector. And there are books everywhere in my home. So I just thought, I'm such a fan of reading and books.
Yeah.
I want my own book out.
Yeah.
It would be so wonderful. So the book's coming out and I'm excited. And, when Laura and I were writing it, I didn't know that it was going to wind up being like short stories. And it is like short stories.
Yeah,
so if
absolutely.
you go to a chapter that says Brooklyn, you're going to get Brooklyn. Or
Yeah.
if you go to Metallica, or if you go to Never Fall in Love with a Hooker, they're all complete thoughts. So, it worked out beautifully that way.
I just finished it on the train ride.
Uh-huh.
Literally, I have 40 pages left to go, or 40 notes left to go. Whatever.
Okay.
I read it on my iPad.
Oh, good.
And it's amazing, man.
Oh, good.
It's you've been through a lot.
I have.
You've survived a lot, and you've seen a lot.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm thriving.
And now you're thriving. You feel good.
Yes.
Yeah. You must be excited to have it out there. And I imagine, too, I mean, the process of writing a book is a bit cathartic. We've talked about that in your episode, Laura.
Yeah.
And so I imagine for you, there must have been a lot of pieces like that, because there's probably people, I'm imagining there were people you reached out to that maybe you hadn't, no one you reached out to that you hadn't spoken to in a while to
Well, I have a scatterbrain from all the drinking and drugging, and I remember only parts of my life. But the beautiful thing about it is that when I went into the closet, only to get clothes,
It's an oddity.
and to get these journals. I kept journals since I'm about 15, 16 years old.
Wow.
And there was nothing poetic or creative about it, but it was lists of what I was doing. Took the B train from Brooklyn to Manhattan, went to CB's, late night, we're going to go to Max's. And there were lists like that for many years. So that helped my memory.
Yeah.
And so how we wound up doing it is what we Skyped every day for 2 years. And I read from the journals. Laura kept notes. She wrote some stuff like that was not in the journals, if I'm saying this correctly. And then we finessed everything so that it would sound like my voice, because that was like really important, of course.
Yeah.
Let me just say one thing.
Sure.
I remember that there was a concern on your part about me being able, or us being able, to maintain your voice, given that you're a cute little gay guy and I'm a tall straight woman.
Well, that's why I had to send you links on gay sex. And unfortunately, I had to send you lots of articles on AIDS in the 80s.
Yes, that's
just
true.
so, we would
But I
both
was
be up
there,
to
so-
speed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I
But
was
that,
there, so I
we
know.
would be up to speed on all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
What was your question?
Well, I'm just thinking that too. Were parts, maybe they were torture. Was it painful? Some parts to revisit? Or no.
Painful when you have to relive unhappy memories. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank God there's not too many unhappy memories. But reliving the 80s when I found out that I was HIV positive, that was no pleasure trip.
And telling your mother- and telling your mother
everybody,
was hard.
all the men that I knew, all we had was fear, because there was no cure. It was the 80s and everyone was in a panic. And, I had to relay this to my mom and my sister. And that was not a very fun moment. It was a heartbreaking moment.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. But, it is cathartic and you have to get it out there.
Yeah.
And, like the movie, when you tell the truth, people respond to that. And you never know who that next person is that you're helping because you spoke the truth.
Right, of course. And you said with emails that you got from the movie, in
that
one
was-
day
that
or
was
something,
crazy.
you got 1,200 emails and you
Well,
sat down and answered all of them. The
what
type of
happened-
people reaching out, the
yes.
story about the boy,
Oh, yeah.
the bright young man who writes about
Yes.
being
Uh-huh.
gay and his
Yep.
father and
Sure,
whatnot.
sure.
And so it must be an amazing experience for you to be able to give some comfort and guidance to someone like that because of the vehicles that you put out there by writing the book, by having the film out there.
Well, I knew when Drew Stone and our producer Michael Alex were making the movie, I didn't want this to just be a music film or a heavy metal documentary.
Yeah.
If we were going to spend that kind of time together and we were going to ask Metallica and Cyndi Lauper and John Lydon and Phil Anselmo from Pantera to be in the movie, it had to be a well-rounded movie.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about everything.
Yeah.
And in talking about everything, it's cathartic and you help other people. I was about to say, and you just brought it up, when the film went on Netflix, about 2 days later, I got over 1,200 emails. Now, half those emails were like, dude, you signed Metallica. But the other half were heartfelt emails that from people who were struggling. And I always bring this one story up because there is a young boy, I'm 60, he's 21, in Colombia. He lives with his father, he's HIV positive, and he had felt that if I told my dad, he would murder me.
Yeah.
He would throw me out of the house and all this stuff. And so we talked about, did he need medication yet? Was he asymptomatic? And just that, you can't write back to somebody like that and say, glad you liked the film. So I took that kind of time with everyone who wrote me letters like that and just told them about my experience. And if my experience could be helpful to them, then I was of service to that person.
And your experience was pretty wild, man. You had a great time.
For the most part,
you
yes.
had a phenomenal time.
I think I lived the life of many people, all condensed into me.
Yeah, well, the other amazing thing, too, I noticed is that, you got to fulfill this music dream of yours and meet all of those people, a lot of idols, right?
Yes.
And all that. And then you also had the photography outlet and the photography passion. And then you also got to meet all of your idols and become friends with them as well. Most people just go to their 9 to 5. That's what they do, and that's it, right? You got to do both, which is pretty remarkable.
I say this in the book. I believe that I came out of the womb loving music. That was a passion for me for day one. I can't remember not ever loving music. So at home in Brooklyn, I would watch all those music shows, like Don Kirshner's Midnight Special, Don Cornelius' Soul Train, and Dick Clark's American Bandstand. All of that informed my listening, and it wound up my listening wound up being because a broad
audience. Group of people.
Now we have to start this part over. I'm sorry. This is where you're going to have to edit. I promise you. Yeah.
You had a wide range of influences.
I had a wide range of influences from a very early age because of those music shows on TV.
Yeah.
So it was everyone from David Bowie to Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
And so that listening informed me that there were a wide range of artists out there.
Yep.
And growing up, I just wound up loving a large range of artists. And so at some point when I was 15 or 16 years old, I would go visit my dad in the city on Astor Place. There was an international newsstand on the corner, and I would get, someone told me about the Village Voice. And also the Village Voice informed me where I was going and what I was about to hear.
Let me just say that Village Voice was a Bible for all of us at that time.
Sure.
Everything we did.
And so 15, 16, just put a timestamp on that.
Ouch. 75, 76.
75, 77.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, I was 15, 16. I looked like I was 12 and a half.
Yeah.
They didn't card most of us back in the day.
Right.
So I wound up going everywhere to see all of the artists that I dreamed of seeing, and just all artists that I had read about that were coming up on the scene. And I would just go to see them, whether it was the Dead Boys, there was this British invasion coming to CBGB, which was The Damned, Eddie and the Hot Rods, X-Ray Specs, I think even Penetration. All these bands came there. So I was curious. I've always been curious.
Yeah.
So I went to see everything.
Yeah.
I just want to also add here that I think that was something unique about that time and that place.
Yeah.
For us. When being around in rock and roll in those clubs at the beginning of this punk rock invasion that was here and there in England.
Did you guys run together in those years? Is that when you knew each other?
But also not really.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yes, we did.
But not for a very, not
You
for
guys
a
are like
very
an
long
old
time.
married couple.
No, I don't remember. You know what? Like I said, I have half a brain left. I don't remember.
He's wrong.
I remember it being 1979. I remember shooting the first photographs for the student teachers. They were all good. We were all good friends.
Yep.
Beyond that, I have to say we didn't hang out because what wound up happening is 1980 came around and I started my job at the Ritz.
Right.
So
Well,
I don't
yeah, no,
remember
I
us
mean,
seeing each other.
1980.
Did you book the student teachers at the Ritz? Did you sign them to Elektra?
You
What
know
the fuck?
You should have, man.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Jesus Christ.
All of you need to shut the fuck up because coulda, woulda, shoulda. I'm not into it.
I mean,
Continue,
student
Laura.
teachers,
Listen.
Metallica,
Listen.
come on.
Yeah, really. I mean, big
Larry, I will get to you soon.
Okay, listen.
Laura?
No. The point. Yes, we definitely were running together, hanging out. Definitely.
Whatever.
But in 1980, I left. I left rock and roll.
Right,
So
that's
yeah,
right.
obviously at that point he went on to book the Ritz. So it was a different situation. Sorry.
Right.
Keep backing off.
That's all right.
So yes, obviously that, but during those few years, 77, 78, 79, yeah, we were definitely, I mean, Lori and Bill,
already.
all right, we were together a lot.
Yes.
And there is one
And
lie.
I think we were always at Bill Arning's house.
Yeah, we
right?
always hung out at Bill Arning's
Right.
house. It's amazing. But there is, and you can edit this out because he'll probably want you to. There is a lie that we told in the book.
Oh, well, we're going to keep this in, whatever it is. What's the lie?
There is a lie where we were talking about. He's going to kill me. When we were talking about, what do you call it? You being gay. Yeah, I don't know if you know about that. And
I guess if you tell me I'm gay, I'm
you're
gay.
Okay, and you said that you'd only been with one woman.
Oh Christ!
That's a lie.
Really?
Because I was number 2. And he disagrees, but the fact is we had a drunken night in CBGB's, 17, 16 years old, and kind of went outside and in behind CBGB's during the summer. And, you know.
Let me just say unequivocally,
Yeah.
I am not editing that out of this podcast.
Okay.
There's not a chance that's
Never
coming out
ask
of this
me
show.
back again.
Okay.
And she was drunk and loose. I was drunk and loose, and I remember nothing.
Wow.
Continue,
But
please.
let me just say.
That is not
that
coming out of the show.
The
That's
reason.
the best tidbit
But
ever.
let me tell you, the reason is that because there's one thing that.
Do you see my face?
Yeah,
I do.
I love you.
touch
The
me.
thing is, the thing is that what Michael definitely is known for is his adoration of drummers. He was always very like.
He talks about that in the book.
it
Yeah,
He was
totally.
like Johnny
We do?
Blitz. Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah.
do.
Great.
And Johnny Blitz was like your first great, drummer love, and I was a drummer, and I was very tomboyish and
Yep.
blondish, and definitely your type. So it happened.
Okay, whatever
Accept
she
it.
says. Onward and upward.
Wow. Laura, you had gone through your book not too many years prior to this, starting this task, and you're working on yet another book, unless that one's done also.
No. not yet.
What were you sort of, were you ready to help somebody else out? Did you want to help someone through their
jeez.
journey? Like, what were your thoughts
Well,
there?
I mean,
It was like prostitution. I gave her money. I say
Was
with
it
a
enough
I
money?
say with this. No, of course not.
listen,
Nothing
man,
is
if you
ever
put
enough
together
money.
The amount of time that I have worked on it,
And that I have
comes
worked.
out to a quarter an hour,
Something
or
like
25
that.
cents.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lee approached me about connecting with Michael, and I was like, wow, what a
Michael,
wild. No, yeah, right.
That never happened.
I was like, wow, that's a really interesting idea. I didn't jump on it. I wasn't necessarily thinking of doing another rock and roll book, but he just thought this would be a really good idea, and I think I could sell it very easily. And I was like, okay. Plus, I hadn't seen him in 100 years, but I had seen. This is really. I haven't said this to anybody.
Oh, here
I
we
had
go
seen
so many
again.
firsts on this show. I love it. I don't have to do anything.
I had seen him in, when you Google people, like periodically on the web.
So you've been
and I
stalking
had
him
seen-
throughout
no,
the years.
I had seen him. I was like, wow, he is really cute. How did that happen? And
Because I never changed.
but anyway, I had thought about getting back in touch with him just sort of as a friend. But like I
Nothing
say,
more.
this came through. This came through from Lee, and I just thought, wow, this would be interesting. Let's have lunch. And so we had lunch, and we talked, and we really connected because of our background. It's kind of written into our DNA that we connect, and so we did. And we took it off from there. And I was really intrigued because it went back to where I had kind of written about, and I was always amazed at what he had gone on to do. The other thing I wanted to say, which is a separate issue, is that one of the things about Michael saying he came out of the womb loving music, one of the things that really shocked me that I was so amazed by in writing this book with him was his initial just adoration of Nina Simone, and then being able to realize that, and really, and later on when he was a professional, and really pushing and making sure that happened, that he got reconnected with, that he got connected with her, and that he was able to work with her. And I mean, think about that, loving somebody when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, and then being able to see that, in your lifetime.
Yeah,
I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Right. That's what I mean by there's like multiple stories of that. I mean, certainly some that just became friends, but then the others that you worked with and you shepherded through a third chapter, in some ways of their career. It's unbelievable.
It was amazing.
And you had a really wild relationship with her, it sounds like.
It was fantastic. I completely adore Nina Simone. I think she's the greatest artist that ever walked the planet. I'm sure Bob Dylan would say the same thing.
No, my point is, I mean, I think you should talk a little bit about that, because one of the things that not only struck me was the fact that relationship happened, but knowing the sort of tenor of Nina's personality and working with that, I think took great
patience,
enormous talent on your part.
Both of our parts. As a youngster, I had no plan B. I knew that I wanted to be in music, but what does that mean to a 15-year-old in Brooklyn? I didn't play an instrument. I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was I loved those TV shows that showed me a breadth of artists. And so at one point, before I was a teenager, even my Aunt Jenny would play Nina Simone, Johnny Mathis, Isaac Hayes, and her voice I thought was very intriguing. It was very androgynous. And I don't think I knew that word androgynous then, but it was just intriguing to me. So I wound up listening to her from that point on, when I was 12 years old on. So when I got the opportunity at some point to sign her to Elektra, I was glad that I did, but it took a lot of work because our chairman, Bob Krasnow, thought she was just washed up, and she was notoriously a pain in the ass. Difficult. And none of that bothered me because I just loved the music so much.
Right.
So I wound up meeting her in 1983. We had some laughs. I talk about it in the book, so I won't get into it too deep. But finally in 1991, 92, I signed her to Elektra. And we made a record called A Single Woman. It was about love and loneliness and loss. And it was produced by this drummer, Andre Fisher, who played with Chaka Khan in Rufus. And we got a 50-piece orchestra. And it's a very lush, beautiful, and sad recording. And it wound up being her last recording. The record came out in 93, and 10 years later in 2003, she passed away. But it was an extraordinary relationship with her. And she liked me a lot because she knew I had so much respect for her on many levels. And we had some laughs. And, I was saying to Laura, I see like all these people have like 2 and 3 pages in the book. I think there are 18 pages or 22 pages of Nina.
25.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, so it really is the Nina Simone story, and then Michael.
Right, correct.
Right.
But yeah, an extraordinary artist. And, I always tell people, if you aren't around when she was alive, or if you don't know anything about her, the beauty of technology these days is you can go to Google and put Nina Simone, the Netherlands, 1965, and you're going to get some beauty of a song out of her, because she was really always wonderful.
Yeah.
My favorite artist.
Well, that's great. So you've answered the question, because one of my questions for you was, of all the people, photographers, artists, musicians, whatnot, who was the one that had it all for you? Was it Nina?
I feel like I only worked with artists who had it all. In my 25 years of listening to demos, because that's what I did as an A&R executive. And at that point in time, there was only cassettes that you would listen to of young artists who wanted a record deal. And there were lots of good tapes that I listen to.
Yeah.
But I always talk about good ain't great, and you can't overwhelm yourself with good, because you know what? You'd run out of money real fast. So I felt that I had this knack for realizing what great was. So whether great is James Hetfield from Metallica, John Lydon, Cyndi Lauper, I mean, come on, Cyndi Lauper, one of a kind, and Nina Simone, I just was the most taken by Nina.
Yeah.
Everything about her, the good and the bad. Doesn't mean I loved working with any of them any less.
Sure.
But she really spoke to me. And for me, when she sang a song, any song, whether it was a Bob Dylan song, a George Harrison song, she got to the heart of the matter of a song, and that just kind of blew you away.
Yeah. What was the part of being an A&R guy that you liked the most? Was it sitting in a room and listening to demos? Was it going out to see the band perform live, shepherding them through all the, to the record coming out, seeing their rise and success? What part of it, if there was a part, maybe you just loved it all, what was the part that you were like, this is where I'm really my most comfortable?
Well, it was my dream job, so I really did love it all. And I don't mean that to be just like it's not a general answer. I would get to the office 10
Could
o'clock.
it be your dream job?
Are you
Your
interrupting?
dream job. Yeah, but you didn't even know what A&R was.
Do you want me to go home now? It wound up being a dream job because I knew I wanted to be in the music business.
Yeah.
Thank you for interrupting. You could edit that out.
I love you too.
No, please, enough of this fucking loving shit. Oh, excuse me. You got to take that out too.
No, that's
Okay, listen.
Okay, go on. I'm sorry. Go on.
It wound up being my dream job because I knew I wanted to be in music. I didn't play any instruments. So I learned that I had a knack for greatness. So every day I would listen to cassettes. My assistant, Tony, her and I would get all the music newspapers from across the United States, Montreal, Canada, London, Germany, and we would cut out articles of young people who were looking for deals, who only had independent records out. And if they sounded interesting, we would call people on the phone. And that's how I did my job. Other than, when Bob Krasnow, our chairman, would send lawyers, managers, publishers my way. And I would listen to music that way as well. But it was all very exciting. And of course, I loved going to see artists live to see if they were any good at all. And like I said, there's a lot of good people out there, a lot of awful people.
Yeah.
But like I said, you can't just sign good. You need great. I'm sorry.
No.
I loved the whole experience of A&R.
Yeah.
Once I found out what A&R meant, because when Bob gave me that job, I panicked. I called people who I did know in the music business, and I said, what does A&R mean? It means artist and repertoire. So I loved the whole experience up until the record was about to come out, because my nerves were always shot about that. Because you would then hope that the marketing department, publicity, radio, promotion would do their job as well as I did mine making the record. And, you got to just cross your fingers and hope when there's a full moon or whatever that these records are going to sell.
Yeah.
So I really always loved the whole experience, except the nerve-wracking part of the actual release date.
Because that's got to be, that's your baby now out in the world, and there are other people, there are other adult supervisors taking your child out there.
That's correct.
Right, you can only do so much after that point.
Well, I always butted into everyone else's business at the record company because, like you said, if I was making this Tracy Chapman record, Metallica record, I needed that publicity department to know exactly what this was all about. So they can take it out into the world properly as well. And I did that with all the departments. They didn't like it much, but I didn't care, because if I was making a record and it took that long and I thought the record was great, I had to let these people know this is how I felt, this is what I do, and I hope you can do the same thing. Keep in mind, A&R is the most important department of a record label, because if you don't have great records, you ain't got nothing.
Right.
You don't have a company.
How has A&R changed since you've been in the business?
Good question.
Because I know it has.
Well, keep in mind that people don't buy records like they used to. Records, I say. But vinyl has made a comeback. How has A&R changed? Well, I don't know if A&R people still go out every night, but that's just me paraphrasing.
Do they need to go out every night?
Well, that's
things like
that's the
YouTube
next
and
thing.
Instagram, right?
Well, a lot of people just see artists on YouTube and Instagram, but to me, that's not enough, because you may see something that you really like, but then you got to go see this person and see what they radiate from the stage. Are they that charismatic or not? Do they have something to say or not? So, I mean, in the end, you do have to meet these people, or else you're not fully doing your job. But yeah, things have changed. People don't buy music like they used to. The audience listens to music in a very different way via Pandora and Spotify and all those type of outlets, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a very different world out there.
Yeah.
And, for the longest time when those outlets came to be, a lot of artists were, not getting paid correctly. I remember when I think it was when Apple Music just started a few years ago only, that they had said, Apple Music people went to Taylor Swift and said, we want your record on there. But the first 90 days, everyone was going to get Apple Music free. Now, she didn't want her record on there, and I didn't blame her, because, here you are, somebody, you're paying a producer, you're paying musicians, you're paying yourself, you're paying the studio, you're doing all this stuff, and you want to make money too.
Yeah.
I'm sure people called her every name in the book, but I applauded her for that. And after 90 days, her record went on Apple Music. And, I still think artists don't get paid what they should be getting paid. But, that's another entity of the music business that I don't know a lot about these days.
And now they have to tour more.
Oh,
Now they
tour
have to go
more.
back to touring.
And there's
And the
another
VIP thing, the meet
unfortunate,
and
well,
greet,
there's
right?
another unfortunate thing. If you ask me, there's something called a 360 deal, where the record company takes, I think, part of your publishing, part of your merch, part of your live performances, and that's a
They
drag.
take all that against the advance.
Yes, against
basically.
what they're spending. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's the merch. Maybe that's the one last thing that if you're on the road and you're selling merch and you do well there, you're keeping that money. But it's a totally different world now than it was, from 1980 to 2005 when I did A&R.
Do you think in the big picture that artists are losing out?
Do you think financially, you mean?
Yeah, now.
Well, I guess it depends on who you are. I guess you're not making a lot of money when you're a young artist. And then if you're somebody who's playing Madison Square Garden for 5 nights in a row, you're definitely making money. So,
yeah, but as he says about how you really need to tour more now these days to make money.
Well, you need to
versus
tour more
selling
only
a lot of
because
albums.
people aren't buying records like they used to.
Exactly.
Everyone still is now downloading, and back then, people, when the internet first started, people were file sharing and basically stealing, which stunk.
And that's came up in the book where we talked about
Yes, it
his
does.
decision to leave the business.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. That's about where that was a transition for you.
Sure. I did A&R for 25 years. I loved the job. And once I saw people weren't buying records like they used to anymore, and I was, again, not feeling well with my health, which is around 2004, 2005, I was at Palm Pictures, and I just decided, you know what? I did this beautifully for 25 years. I'm done. And then I had to think for a moment, and I said, oh, well, you know what? I always loved photographs, so I'm going to start taking pictures. And that's what I did. And then every so often, an artist like Cyndi would call me in 2009 and 2010 and ask me to A&R records for them, and I did. And everything is different now than it was back then. And I was so happy that I got to do A&R at that period in time.
Yeah.
It was delicious. It was crazy. It was outrageous. It was drug fueled. It was so many things. And I lived.
And you made it. You're
made
a survivor,
it.
dude.
I am most certainly a survivor, yes.
Unbelievable. So you describe, I believe in the beginning of the book, it's been a week since I read the beginning of the book.
It's okay.
This confidence that you had early on growing up. And you had an incredible family. I mean, your parents split, but you still had a lot of love in your family. You had I would say,
Well, my mom was a force.
yeah.
A beautiful force.
Yes, Blanche.
So Blanche, who we talk about in the book, and there's a little chapter on Blanche at the end, but we do talk about, well, it is a little chapter, but we do talk about her throughout the book, so that makes up for the 3 pages at the end, right before gratitude, but go ahead.
And I was going to say, even though in there you described the fact that there was things that weren't to be talked about.
Sure.
Right? There was still a lot of love. There was still a big connection, yeah?
Yeah, it was very strange in this Hispanic family that I grew up in. I don't know, nobody talked about anything. And if things happened in the family, you don't say anything about it, Everything was almost a bit superficial, know?
Yeah.
And I don't know where I'm going with this.
That's okay. I got one for you. So where I was going was the the self-confidence you had, the sort of innate self-confidence. You knew that you were possibly gay, right? I don't know if you knew at that point that's
Honey,
what it was,
I knew
right?
from day one.
All right, so you knew from day one. Okay, so you knew you were gay, right? And
I was an
and you were
absolute
going
flirt
out
at a very young age.
Right.
Yeah.
You had all of that going for you. You knew you wanted to be in music. You had incredible independence given to you by Blanche.
As long as I did well in school.
As long as you did well in school. I love the do for yourself attitude that she instilled, or maybe at that point it was both your parents. But I have to say, reading the book, I was struck by a lot of the self-destructive nature in there.
Sure.
Where do you think that came from, and why?
Oh boy,
I'm going to go deep.
No.
I'm going to take it right down.
Okay,
man.
calm down. Where did that come from? I don't think it started off wanting to be destructive.
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed drinking.
Yeah.
And it loosened me up. It made me aware that I could talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. But like any addiction that you realize that you have, drugs and alcohol just wind up turning on you at some point. It doesn't work anymore. You're not the same person.
Do you think it was just too much, too fast, too long, and then all of a sudden you're addicted? Because was your dad an addict, your mom, anybody? There was nothing in there.
There was no alcohol in our family at all. I think there was a little creme de coco in the closet, in the cabinet in the kitchen when the priest from down the block who was at Our Lady of Lourdes. I guess he worked there. He was a priest there. And once a week he would come visit Mom and they would talk, and she would give him the same thing she gave me, cream cheese and jelly on white bread. Oh my God. And
awful.
So no, there was never alcohol in the home. So I guess, like I said, it started off fun.
Right.
And, of course you want to go out with your friends and drink a whole lot of beers and stuff. But then as you grow up, alcohol just doesn't work the same anymore. I liked it though for a very long time.
Yeah.
I liked doing drugs for a very long time.
Yeah.
It got me out into the world. I stayed up late. I went to all the places that I wanted to go to.
And that's also right. You're around rock and roll.
In the 80s, all of that stuff was very prevalent in the music business, in rock and roll. So I just went with the flow.
Yeah.
And
it's funny you say you went with the flow, because as I was reading the book again last night, as I was sort of drawing closer to the end, I found like every chapter or short story, as you put it earlier, had this flow where like you're signing Metallica, you've got White Zombie, you've got the photography thing, you're meeting your idols. And then in just the same sort of way that you would describe that, you would describe all the relationships and with men and also all the alcohol abuse and the drug abuse. But you could tell you were inching toward like, I had to have a fucking problem.
Right.
And I kept thinking like, where is that link? And I think you just said it's just the flow. You just flowed.
Well, you went
right
with the flow until it was a problem. And what the problems wound up being is, I became a no-show.
For a long time.
I was a liar, lied about where I was.
The piece with your dad, dude. Oh my God. With
Yeah,
the credit cards. That's a rough.
Well, not fun. I was 32. I was at the worst of my drinking and drugging. My dad was in the hospital. I asked if I could borrow his credit cards because I needed to pay the rent. It was a lie. I just couldn't use my Time Warner card for incidentals like that. No cash advances.
Right.
So I lied to him basically, and I used those cards for drugs. And 3 days later, he passed away. So I talk about that in the book too, so I won't give away too much. But only a couple years later, I realized how horrible that was, but I wasn't myself. I was drinking too much. I was coking up too much. I was cracking up too much, and it wasn't fun anymore. It was just a sad affair. And, knowing that I was HIV positive too didn't help my mental state. So, at some point I went back to the cemetery with those credit cards. I cut them all up. I buried them with a beautiful flowering plant on top, and I told him how sorry I was. And that was the best and only amends I could give to him because he wasn't on this earth anymore.
Sure. And I think that was another piece, too, that struck me about your journey, was that you always seem to make some kind of amends with people.
Well,
That
Blanche
means a lot to you.
brought me up right. And even before I knew about amends, which they talk about in 12-step programs,
That's what I mean. Before that, even you were doing it.
I think it was because my mom, like I said, brought me up right, and I love people, and I just always knew that I had to just do the right thing. Yeah.
Yes, Laura's raising her hand. The perfect student teacher raising her hand.
Yeah.
Can I?
Don't touch me.
I just want to introduce a part of this that has nothing to do with what you were just speaking about.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. Which is that we haven't touched upon. We talked about how the Nina Simone chapter is extraordinarily long in the book, but there's another chapter that's very long, and it's the chapter on George Deroe. And I think that it'd be important to talk about his relationship with George Deroe.
Absolutely.
Is very remarkable.
We just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, well, I was
It's in the
getting
notes.
us there.
Tell her.
I appreciate
Tell
that.
her.
Yeah, right.
For butting in.
You forced my segue. I think that's fantastic.
Well, what was your segue?
Well, no, I was gonna talk about Mapplethorpe and
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, why don't you
just-
take it there?
There you go.
Okay,
Tell
because
me about this, Joseph.
I also want to talk about Joseph Boyce when we get there too.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Let's go.
You know what?
George Deroe.
Wait a minute. Both of you are getting on my one last good nerve here. Alan, our dear
We're
friend
just-
Alan is here in the room with us,
Yes.
being
Wait, your dear
lovely.
friend.
You be quiet and be quiet, and but you might have to take over soon. And you have a great accent, so that'll help the
You
listener.
sound awesome.
Yeah.
I know. George Deroe.
Oh, George Deroe. Oh, like, where do I begin? I went to School of Visual Arts for 1 year. I loved photography. When I was a young kid, when I went to friends' homes, I always asked if I could see their family albums because I loved the stories that photographs told. So at some point, I knew I was going to take photographs. So I would carry around my Polaroid camera, but the Polaroid, when I started taking pictures, the Polaroids were of, bands that I saw at all the nightclubs. And then that turned into taking pictures of men and one-night stands. And so I have thousands of those photographs, which I don't know what that says about me. I was loose. What can I tell you? So I loved photography. Like I said, I only went to School of Visual Arts for 1 year, but I knew I wanted to take pictures. So at some point, that's what I did. I took pictures. But I was a really big fan of an artist named George Deroe. He was from New Orleans. He was very well respected down there. And he took pictures of black men, amputees, and street people. And it just fascinated me because the work was so honest. And it was so honest that my other friend and photographer that I loved, Robert Mapplethorpe, would make visits to George Deroe. And they both borrowed from each other, aesthetically. Mm-hmm. And I think Robert might have borrowed a little more from George than George from Robert. But you know what? That's the way of the world. We all borrow from our favorites and hope we can make it our own. But George, I was friends with for many, many years, almost maybe 30 years. And I talk about him very lovingly and very funny in the book because the very first time I met George, I went to a place called Tommy's Florist and I bought a whole big thing of white Casablanca lilies. And I'm walking down Dauphine Street and I see a man that looks like with this beard, like blue beard. Is that what his name was?
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a butcher knife in his hand and there was a kid with one leg on crutches, standing there, and George is yelling at him, and he's like, Mr. George, I got caught in the rain, and I need some money. And George was yelling and screaming at him, you can't just come here unannounced. And he looks at me, and he goes, who are you? I said, I'm Michael Alago. And he was like, oh my God, as he's waving the butcher knife, come in. So that was my introduction to George. And when I get there, on the steps, I see a brown prosthetic leg, and I'm thinking, who does this leg belong to? I said, George, who's the leg belong to? He said, oh, we had a party last night. I said, well, is the person still here? He said, no, but he'll be back for the leg. I mean, so that was my introduction to George, and those were the kind of things. It was expect the unexpected when you went to George's house. Mm-hmm. Everyone in New Orleans loved him. He loved everyone. He sometimes loved the wrong people, but he was really just an extraordinary human being. And I saw him up until months before he passed away. I think he was 83. Marvelous photographer, George Dureau, Dureau. If you're a photography lover and you don't know anything about him, go to Google. You know, that's the beauty of technology these days. You know, when young people say to me, I wish I could have seen the Dead Boys, I would say, sorry, you couldn't be there. Right. But the beauty of technology and YouTube, you could pull up Dead Boys 1977. It's not the same, but you get a feeling for what was going on back then.
Right. As a photographer yourself, as an artist yourself, what did you get from George Dureau? Not so much your relationship and friendship and love, but as an artist, what did you get from him?
That when you take pictures, here we go again, you have to tell the truth. When you take pictures, you are trying to pull something human and beautiful out of the subject. And if I knew how to say that to the subject, and he or she, but mostly he, gave me back something, then you would get a picture that was beautiful and truthful and had a sense of atmosphere, and we both did our jobs. Mm-hmm.
I think the thing about Dureau and that's true what you're saying, but his subject matter was primarily African-American men, amputees, and
and little people.
People.
Yeah.
Those are and so when you talk about that truth in the photography, I mean, that's remarkable to see him. If you look at some of the photographs, and you can see the pure honesty and generosity of spirit that he brought to that work, to those people. It wasn't just taking a picture of these.
Not at all.
This minority, it was more of the relationship that he had with with them and the camera. It was really, really just remarkable.
Very special artist, very special human being. Yeah.
Same question, Robert Mapplethorpe.
I was going to galleries also as a teenager, 18, 19 years old. And I remember going to the Robert Samuel Gallery on Broadway, run by two men. And that was the first time, I think one of the first times I saw work by Arthur Tress, George Dureau, and Robert Mapplethorpe. Robert's aesthetic was very clean looking. The printing was exquisite, and I loved that he shot men, celebrities, and exquisite flowers. So one day I called his studio on 24 Bond Street, and I said, hi, this is Michael Alago. I do A&R for Elektra, and I would love to purchase 2 of your photographs, and I want to come to your studio. And the first thing he said to me is, I don't know you, and I don't do studio visits. So I took a pause, and I said, well, here's my number. I'm paraphrasing now a bit, and call me if you like. So I guess he must have done some research on me, and he called me a few days later, and he said, sure, come down to the studio, but I can't pull too much workout. Do you know what you want? I said, yes, I want to see Larry with 3 fingers, and I want to see this tiger lily photograph. He said, I can do that. So I get there that day. I also brought him Casablanca lilies that were pristine.
Perfect.
They were perfect because even they couldn't have any kind of browning at the ends of the tips or anything like that because it wouldn't work for his pictures. So I knew how perfect I had to be for that meeting. He loved the pictures. He loved the flowers. He went to get a vase for the flowers, and already he had the 2 photographs up on his desk in his office. And I bought those 2 photographs. They at the time they weren't a lot of money. I think they maybe were $1,200, $1,800 each. And I had money now that I was working at a record company, and we became friends. And unfortunately, he passed away in March of '89, but I knew him the last 6 years of his life. And he was an extraordinary artist. He also was one of a kind. And the work just blows me away. Yeah. I think both George Dureau and Robert Mapplethorpe could be my 2 favorite photographers. Yeah.
Yeah, you have it struck me too, you have an incredible sense of detail as you prepared for a lot of these meetings in your life.
Oh, sure.
You know?
Yep.
Flowers were a big part of all of them.
Yes, I love flowers.
Yeah.
And my mother always said, never go to someone's home empty-handed.
Right.
So I always just thought that if you don't know the person well, I mean, I think flowers are just so beautiful. I think everyone would enjoy a flower. Unless they're allergic, but I never thought about that part. So everyone got flowers.
And
yes.
Joseph Beuys.
And Joseph Beuys.
Joseph Beuys. Wow. I knew nothing about Joseph Beuys until around 1983, 84. I was going out with someone named Mitchell Krasnow. He did A&R for Elektra internationally. And one day he was in overseas. Could have been London, could have been Germany, because Joseph was from Dusseldorf. And I got a postcard in the mail from Mitchell to my office at Time Warner in New York. And it was, I can't remember if it was a rabbit or it was part of an installation, the photograph, but the imagery intrigued me. So I started to do some research about Joseph. He also is an extraordinary artist. He was part of a community called Fluxus, and where I can't go into it deep, maybe Laura can talk a little more about it. So I don't know, I just saw his work and I was intrigued. And I couldn't explain the work, but I was just intrigued by the work. And at one point, there was a show called Von Hier Aus, From Here On, in Dusseldorf. So, and I knew he was going to be there. So Mitchell and I went, and every major European artist was there, from Sigmar Polk to Emi Knoebel to George Baselitz. Tons of European major artists. And, you know, when he entered this airplane hangar where the event was happening, the room came to a still. It was like a master walking into a room. And it was really something, because I was also taken aback by him because he exuded so much charisma that just walking into the room, there was an energy. Yeah.
Amazing.
The reason it's remarkable to me is because this was another shocking connection that he and I had, even during those years that we hadn't been connected. Because my father was the art critic for Newsweek magazine for many years, and Joseph Beuys was, and my father and a man named Namjoon Paik, another famous artist, were doing performances together. In fact, I started my book, Girl in the Back, about being in Berlin, and we were in Berlin for one of those performances with my dad, Joseph Beuys, and Namjoon Paik. And so it's amazing. I mean, that there is this connection that we had that when we weren't friends.
You didn't even know about it.
Right,
Yeah, we didn't know about it until we got to
But that
writing
happened
this
a
book.
few times in the book where not seeing each other literally for about 25 years, really. And then having a great connection once we did see each other, and then all these little things
that,
that were adding up. So it
world
made the
getting
work a lot easier. Things became really familiar to both of us. And yeah.
How about Bob Krasnow? That was a very important relationship to you.
Bob Krasnow was one of a kind executive. He was an extraordinary man. He took me into the fold of his family when he didn't even really know me. He just knew that his son thought highly of me and that he wound up hiring me and had faith that this kid who knew nothing, didn't even know what A&R meant, he hired me at Elektra Records. And, so when I even had that interview with him, I went to his office and there were Robert Longos on the wall, walking down the hall. There was a Joni Mitchell macrame. There was Keith Haring. I don't remember a Basquiat, but when I went to his office, we talked about Warhol and Basquiat and Keith Haring and the downtown art scene. And I think he was impressed that I knew about that as well. And I don't say that with any ego. It was just, I loved art. I loved all kinds of art. I loved music. I loved theater. So I think he was impressed by that. So when he hired me, he had this blind faith in me, that I was a sponge, that when I started the job, he allowed me to be in his office so I could listen to what he was talking about with managers, lawyers, and sometimes artists. And I soaked up all of that so that I knew I could then talk to artists and managers, lawyers in that same style, I guess.
Right.
And I learned so much from him. It was so much fun working for Bob. He really an extraordinary human being, one of a kind. And, I say this with some humor in my book that he could knock on the door and you would think, like the chairman of the company is coming to knock on your door. Like, what? What are you doing? I'm just listening to demos. And I remember one day he looked down at my feet to make sure I wasn't wearing sneakers, which I never did. So, you never knew with Bob. Did he want to take you to lunch? Did he want to yell at you? Did he want to praise you? Or did he want to take you for a shoe shine on Madison Avenue? And another little anecdote that I tell in the book is that one day he knocked on the door and he said, somebody's here to say hello. And it was Andy Warhol. And he brought Andy to that whole 15th floor, and he handed out the most current interview. I believe Debbie Harry was on the cover, and he signed Andy Warhol to that interview cover, and he gave that to everybody. So Bob knew how to, keep the spirit of the company up. I don't know how to say it right now any better than that. Bob was just so smart that he knew how to deal with everybody at the label.
Yeah.
And those were the things that happened. It was like expect the unexpected with Bob.
And were those things that you must have gleaned to take into your own work then?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved that he knew that I loved Andy Warhol. I felt honored that he would take me for a shoe shine. Yeah. And, I didn't really, have a dad growing up because I was mostly with my mom. So I took him on in my mind as a father figure.
Yeah.
And he was very loving and trusting. And I even, at one point, the family invited me to Positano with them. And I went on family trips and I was always at their home for dinners. And that helped me blossom. As a person and as an executive.
I think it's palpable in the book that that's the relationship that started to form there because of the lack of relationship with your dad. And the other person whose name I'm totally blanking on right now is from the Ritz, the gentleman at the
Jerry
Ritz.
Brandt.
Jerry Brandt.
Yeah.
Jerry Brandt.
Jerry Brandt gave me my start.
Those two guys really
Yes.
came together for you at an incredible time in your life when your father wasn't around.
Sure.
And filled a big role and then also propelled you.
Well, Jerry hired me at the Ritz in 1980. The Ritz was just about to open. I was walking past that building on East 11th Street one day, and I saw a little white piece of paper. It either said rock club or music club or probably video club opening. So I went into the building. The building was an Art Deco building that was so very beautiful. And I was just looking around and, Jerry was on the balcony and it was like the Wizard of Oz. I always tell people that he said, "Kid, what do you want?" And I said, I don't know. I think I want a job. And he said to me, "Do you have a resume?" I said, "No, I go to the School of Visual Arts and I work at a pharmacy." he found some humor in that, and he called me up to his office, and we talked about everything from the Great American Songbook to contemporary music. He liked me. He took a chance, and he said, I'm going to hire you. You're going to get my lunch, you're going to open my mail, and you're going to answer my phone. And you know what? I was thrilled, because that meant
He trusted you.
he trusted me, and I was now in the music business, you know?
Yeah.
That was my start. And also, being a young sponge, I shared his office, and I had a little part in the corner where I had a little desk and a phone and paperwork. I also got to listen to how he spoke to booking agents about booking a room that held 1,500 or 1,600 seats or people it could hold. So I listened to that for the first 2 years. And by the third year, I was helping him book the room. And by that third year, I knew there was more that I wanted to do, not knowing again what was that next thing, but I felt something that I needed to start moving again. And that's when Mitchell Krasnow said to me, my dad's leaving Warner Brothers. He's restarting Elektra because it was in the crapper, and he should meet you. And I don't know, that's one of those stories that, and the rest is history.
Do you feel like you've had a blessed life?
Well, I'm alive, and I struggled with alcoholism. I struggled with not only having HIV, but full-blown AIDS, and I'm a sober man. I'm coming up on 13 years. So yes, I'm blessed, I'm grateful, and I show that gratitude every day of my life by being of service to other people, by showing up for you, by showing up for just life itself. And when you do that, people know that they can rely on you. And how beautiful a thing that is, that people can rely on you and can trust you when you say, I'm going to be there, and you're there. So yes, I feel blessed every single day. That's why my morning routine is I make my bed, I say my prayers. I've only learned in the morning to have 2 minutes of meditation in the morning and 2 minutes at night, because I still have all this energy in me that I find it hard to quiet down. But like I said, I make my bed. I have my list of thank yous, like, thank you, God, for waking me up. Thank you for waking me up sober. Thank you, since Mom passed, that I have this incredible relationship with my sister Cheryl. And that list goes on for as long as I can remember to make that list. And then I, walk
and
over.
Your best friend, Laura.
I walk over to my 12-step meeting, and that's how I start my day every day. And that's why I have a life,
Yeah. Who are you today? What are you doing? What do you got? What's going on with you today?
Oh, you mean like literally today?
Yeah, well,
like what
today.
kind of person?
Today I know who. Today you're freaked out about coronavirus. You've had a crazy week. I don't mean just literally today.
Where did you get this? I thought you couldn't get these anywhere.
No, you can buy Purell everywhere.
Everywhere.
So wait, what is the question? Like, who am I?
What are you
today?
doing? What are you up to, man? Yeah, what are you fucking with today?
Well, besides doing this interview,
not today. I mean, in general, your life. What are you doing?
What am I
doing? Are you still
doing?
producing records? Are you taking pictures? What do you got? Give me what's on the horizon.
Okay, calm down.
Oh my God.
Well, I have this book coming out. So, with having a book coming out.
Book's out. It's done. Let's move on.
I'm going, you know what? I'm going home.
We're done. We're finished.
Home.
This interview's over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Knowing that I have a book coming out, the publicity department is having me do lots of on-camera podcasts, phoners, lots of interviews, and it's just the beginning. And so I'm doing a lot of that. I still take pictures. I'm mostly taking black and white.
You're
photographs.
putting together Polaroids. The Polaroid collection.
But I wasn't even done explaining that part of it.
I'm mentioning that in case you forgot.
Interrupting, it's called.
I'm going to have you guys over for Christmas.
Yeah, it's okay. On different days. She could do Christmas Eve. I'll do Christmas Day.
I love you so much.
In asking what I'm doing now, I'm doing lots of interviews for the book.
Yeah.
I'm taking lots of black and white photographs with the iPhone, which I love. I have an assistant now, part-time assistant, that's helping me coordinate all my Polaroids so that I hopefully can get a Polaroid deal, a deal for that book. What else am I doing? Wait. I know there's more. I'm still just going out all the time. I'm going to museums and theater. I love the theater. I have a lot of respect for the theater, so I'm always at the theater, no matter how expensive it is. I just put it on the credit card and I go. So, like I said, I am a sober man these days that I'm here to be of service to mankind. That's pretty big and that's pretty broad, but it's all the people that I know. I'm here to be of help and service to people and just love. Because if you don't love, what do you have? You have fear.
I don't
and who
feel
wants
that
to be
love.
in fear? That's because you're annoying and you interrupt me all the time. And, I have to step back for a minute and think, yeah, okay, I guess I do
put
love
her on
Laura.
the list.
Yeah, put her on the list. I'll put her on the list of love.
In the book, she's the last one on the list.
Well, yes.
Guys.
Right? She just made it.
Well, no, that becomes, and that last person on the list becomes the most memorable person
right.
on the list.
Yeah.
So that's who you're going to remember.
Yeah,
Theory.
exactly.
Mhm, sure.
All right, this is for both of you guys, and then I won't take any more of your time.
You could take all of the time you want with me.
Thank you, sir. There's a character in the book we haven't talked about, though, that affects both of you, and that character is New York City.
Yes.
You both came up in this pretty incredible time here in the city, a very dynamic time, a dark time that became a light time, and it's changed incredibly since then. So tell me about the New York that existed then, and tell me about the New York that exists now.
Sure. Laura, you can go first so that I don't get interrupted. Please.
But now this is your chance.
Ladies
to interrupt
first.
her.
No, ladies
No.
first. Go
Ladies
ahead.
first, you go ahead.
Go.
Anyway,
New York back in the day.
New York back in the day. Well, it was very dark. It was very dirty. It was. They weren't cleaning up after the streets were filled with lots of garbage and there was like this underlying building energy that was going on underneath the darkness, and that was this sort of exploding scene with
Music scene. Sure.
not just music, Warhol and
Music,
and
art, off Broadway, off Broadway, East Village. That too.
And yes, and it was, so that was interesting, and we were young, and being young at that point, obviously the music is where we were taken. That grabbed us. But yeah, it was. I have to say, you couldn't. I mean, people were constantly getting mugged and murdered. I mean, the amount of safety on the subways was a joke. And even walking down the street, I mean, I myself am even shocked that I survived. I would take the subway at 3 a.m. with my girlfriend. It was like,
yeah.
I'm surprised. Me and Lori, we used to go out.
Young people, underage.
Yeah,
Some
I
of
know.
us at the point in time.
So it was kind of a dark time. How it is today, sorry. I mean, it's it's hard to say. I have to say, between the time then and time now, we're talking late 70s and today, I would say there was an honesty at that time about the world. And it's probably because the government and the people in charge were being honestly, lazy and not doing anything. But there was an honesty at the time. Right now, I feel there's a lack of honesty. And everything is very too cute, too perfect, too
homogenized,
Amazonian, and I don't. It feels. I to be honest, I can't stand the city now, because I feel disconnected from it. Whereas years ago, I mean, maybe because I was younger and I was out and more and stuff like that. I don't know, but there definitely is sort of this energy that is very different. The energy was much more intense and much more honest in the late 70s than it is now. My belief. I've got daughters, and one of them is at Michigan University getting her PhD, and she can't stand the city. And I have a younger daughter who is in college here, and she's okay with it. I don't know. I feel like where we are now as a city is not in any way as interesting as it used to be. It's, like you say, homogenized, kind of sterile, that's the sense I have. What about you?
Well, I think growing up in going out in the late 70s, I was young. I was naive. I thought I knew everything. So that bravado got me to the music. So I had no fear, even though there were things to really be fearful about. Like Laura was saying, the Bowery is dirty. People lived on the Bowery. There were murders happening. It really was literally a dirty city. But none of that mattered. I don't think it mattered to us at the time because we were young and just wanted to be where the music was. Now, that music happened every night. Like, we really could go out every night.
Yeah.
And I talk about this in my documentary, Who the Fuck Is That Guy?, which I'll promote. It's still on Netflix and it's on Amazon Prime Video as well. But we were out every night. We could start the evening like at 8 o'clock at Madison Square Garden. And when you left Madison Square Garden, if it was a Wednesday night, you go to the Cat Club for something. And now it's 1 o'clock. You might want to catch a set at CBGB. And then once they threw you out of CB's, there were places like, there were after hour places that we all went to. Save the Robots, the Milk Bar. So it was an extraordinary time in the city, and I'm glad I got to experience all of that as a young person, because now music clubs are closing down left and right. We don't even have that beautiful building Roseland anymore, which was there for almost over 50 years. And you would have thought someone would have landmarked that building, but they didn't. So what happens? Another glass condominium goes up, which we don't need in New York City. So New York City now is a very different New York for me. And I don't say that because I'm 60, but because I know what was happening back then. I was out every night, morning, noon, and night when I wasn't in school. And these days, the venues change. A lot of these artists who don't have a place to play in the city because they aren't at the level of a Hammerstein or the Beacon Theater, a lot of stuff gravitated to Bushwick and Greenpoint in Brooklyn. And that's fabulous that continues to exist in a very different way. But New York as a whole is, for me, very homogenized. It's just not like it was. And I think for a long time, I would say the only thing that kept me here was my mom. But since my mom passed, I always think about moving outside of New York, but there's so many great theater productions here, and I go to the theater all the time. I love great restaurants and, museums and art galleries, and all of that is top notch. So you don't get that really unless you're in another major city, whether it's a San Francisco, Los Angeles, or London, or Berlin. But yeah, everything is very manufactured these days, very homogenized. Nothing's dirty like it used to be. And that's just the way of the world. Every big city is like that. Everything is gentrified these days if you live in a big city.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. So I just go with the flow, and I still follow the path that I've always that I always follow, which was my own path. So I know where to find great art. I know what is great off Broadway and on Broadway, and I just, that's how New York serves me these days.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming in, and I want to thank you, Michael, for your honesty and sharing this with me and putting the book out.
Well, thank you very much.
It's, as we said before, you're a survivor. It's a survival tale. And inspiring, and thank you for giving me your time, man. I saw the film. I saw the film a few years ago, and I was like, right, who the fuck is that guy, and how do I get him on the show?
Oh, nice.
I still say that. Who the fuck is that guy?
Right. Why is he showing up in my Skype thing every day?
Really? Yeah. Jesus, fuck.
But yeah, really, I really appreciate this, and thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Hopefully we'll meet up again.
I hope so, man. Good luck with the book.
Look at me
and look. You gotta look at her once, and Laura.
I did all day.
I what?
You're like talking like you're not even.
He's the.
I know.
You have to cut some of this out. Really, you have to edit shit.
No, this is great.
Really?
Yeah, people love this.
I never think that these things are great.
Yeah, no, they're
great. It's going to be great. This is going to make your career. All this banter, Laura. I want to thank you for coming as well.
You're welcome, honey.
And it's really great to meet you in person finally, and to do this.
Absolutely.
And when your next book comes out,
oh God,
the Michael Alago Part 2 story, we'll come back.
Okay, great.
All right.
Knowing my life.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Welcome.
Be well.
Michael Alago, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It really means a lot. Laura, thank you. You are a fantastic co-host. Guys, stay tuned next week for episode 164. I'm still working out who's going to be on the show, but during the week, you can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. All is Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com, and send me a note because you know I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. And in the meantime, my friends, don't watch the news. No roadies, no rock and roll.